Good morning or hello to everybody. I don't know where in the world you all are, but whatever time of the day it is for you, you're very, very welcome. I can see from the chat box that Anzi, you've raised your hand. Is it something specific? Put your mic on if there's something specific you want to say before we begin. No? Okay. As Hansel has just said, if you've got any queries or questions, do write them in the chat box and I'll try and keep an eye on them as I go along, and Hansel will keep up to date with that with me as well. We've got activities to be doing this session. So if you want to, if there's a discussion thing that we're going to talk about or discuss things, then you can open your mics up for that. But otherwise, please keep them muted. I can see that there are a couple of you from earlier in the week, from Monday's session on paper 1. So welcome back. And for those of you who are new, you're very welcome too. So hello, as Hansel said, my name is Sue Page, and welcome to the presentation, Delivering Pearson Edexcel International A-Level English Language, paper 2. Okay, let's move on. For the agenda today, we have got a welcome from Pearson Edexcel and then some aims and objectives. I will introduce myself now, so to get that out of the way. You may have already come across me on Monday, but for those who are new, my name is Sue Page. I've been teaching GCSE, IGCSE, A-level, International A-level English Language and Literature for a number of years throughout Europe and also in Asia. More recently, I moved to southern Spain, which is where I am now. And it is actually sunny today. On Monday, we had horrendous storms, but it is actually sunny today. And then more recently, I have then worked for Pearson as a trainer and also as an examiner. From Monday, I thought I was going to move out of Spain because of the weather, but now I think I might stay for a while longer. We're going to look at the context of the International A-Level English Language. We're going to focus on some assessment objectives, a recent question paper, and examples of a candidate response. We'll look also throughout the presentation of various strategies for teaching. And then, of course, there's always going to be questions, networking, and a concluding message from Pearson. So let's boogie on, as they say. Assessment objectives, we're going to look at what they are, why they're used when writing examination papers. We're going to analyse a recent question paper and then learn which types of questions match the different assessment objectives. We're going to investigate how questions have been answered, so we're going to get feedback from previous exam series and also from the examiner's reports as well. Strategies for teaching, I will give hints and tips as we go along the way, and also please, I would like you to put your expertise forwards as well and to share all your strategies for teaching, anything that you've come across that has been useful. And there is a little bit of time at the end of the presentation where hopefully we've got a few minutes to actually open up the mics and have a talk to each other, which is the networking point as well. So let's move on to the welcome from Pearson. Welcome to Pearson Edexcel. We are the world's leading learning company and as the UK's largest awarding organisation, best placed to provide qualifications aligned to the British educational system. Our mission is to help people make progress in their lives through learning, because we believe that learning opens up opportunities, creating fulfilling careers and better lives. Our qualifications and assessments help to educate millions of people worldwide. We provide innovative textbooks, curriculum materials, multimedia learning tools, IT platforms, and professional development. At the core of everything that we do at Pearson Edexcel is the desire to make a measurable impact on improving people's lives through learning. Edexcel is part of Pearson Education and it's the UK's largest awarding body, as I said. Our international heritage stretches back over 150 years. And today we partner with schools and universities and employers worldwide, offering world-class globally recognised qualifications to over 3.5 million students a year in over 70 countries. Over 10 million scripts are marked annually with exceptionally reliable results. It's very impressive. Okay, so moving on. General information about the International A-Level English Language. The A-Level language is not a proficiency qualification, just like, for example, the IELTS. If you're not familiar with the IELTS, it's the International English Language Testing System. It's a stepping stone to more advanced linguistics and needs to be approached with that very much in mind. It's totally different to what would be termed as a proficiency qualification. And so the international A-level is very similar to the domestic qualification, so the international as opposed to just the normal A-level. They're very similar, and some of those resources are very interchangeable with each other. The qualification blends knowledge and skills in an integrated and coherent way. It can be treated as a modular qualification, and so some candidates do take the AS, the advanced subsidiary, in year 12, for example, and then they stop. We're going to look at that in a second. So it's very flexible in terms of the ways in which it can be approached. Here we have a table to the specification, where you can see about the IAS and the IA2. If you're not familiar with that, the IAS is the International Advanced Subsidiary and the IA2 is the International A2. The IAS can be taken for units 1 and 2, and then they can stop, the students can stop, or they can continue to units 3 and 4, and then with all of that additional content, then they are able to attain the international A-level. It might be worth pointing out as well that it says Unit 1, 2, 3 and 4. This is sometimes referred to as Paper 1, 2, 3 and 4, and sometimes even to Module 1, 2, 3 and 4. It's essentially the same thing. Unit 1 is called Context and Identity. Okay, language, context and identity. I covered that earlier in the week. Today we're going to look at language in transition. And those two papers, Monday's paper and then this paper, would make up the AS. Later on next week, I will be covering the Unit 3 and the Unit 4, which then will in total make up the International A-level. Okay, so assessment objectives. These are the same whether it's for the AS or the A-level, but the weightings are different, obviously, because you can stop after the AS units 1 and 2. But they are the A01s, 2, 3, 4 and 5. They're all the same for both levels. A01, Assessment Objective 1, is to apply appropriate methods of language analysis using associated terminology and coherent written expression. I'm going to mention it right now at the beginning of the presentation that terminology is the absolute crux of everything. Students or candidates using terminology but not knowing really exactly what they're talking about, they're not going to achieve get access to the higher bands. The terminology needs to be accurate, it needs to be relevant, and candidates need to be confident in using the different forms of the terminology. Assessment Objective 2 is to demonstrate critical understanding of the concepts and issues relevant to language use. AO3, to analyse and evaluate how contextual factors and language features are associated with the construction of meaning. So Assessment Objective 4 is to explore the connections across texts informed by linguistic concepts and methods. Assessment Objective 5 is to demonstrate expertise and creativity in the use of English to communicate in different ways. And it's also worth noting here that Paper 2 or Unit 2 or Module 2 does not assess Assessment Objective 5. So it's just A's 1, 2, 3 and 4 for this paper. Moving on, the assessment objectives are used to ensure that consistency is achieved across all the different qualifications in the same subject. For example, Pearson's English Language A-level starts from the same basis as the other examining boards, for example, AQA, and this is an off-qual requirement. This ensures fairness is achieved and that there is clarity and transparency of information. The subject domain, which is also called the construct, is tested appropriately, and that therefore validity throughout is achieved. There are stated reference points for paper setters, for examiners, for teachers, and for candidates. So you can see that this is a really transparent way of assessing the subject thoroughly. And the assessment process runs efficiently during often pressurised periods of the year. And here in Europe, that's usually between May and July. I know down in Asia, when I was in Singapore, we were testing at the end of the year, so in December, November, December. So it does vary, but we do mark papers at very pressurised times, and a lot of people are actually working full-time during that time as well, so it's a very pressurised time. It has to be efficient. So what is assessed where in the International A-level language? Well, as I said a moment ago, the paper 1, WENO1, it's split into two sections, as is the paper 2, as is the paper 3, and paper 4. There are always two sections with one question in section A and one question in section B, and they're compulsory. So question 1 assessed AOs 1, 2, 3, 4, and in question 2 it was AO5. This paper, the paper 2, is slightly different in that section A, question 1 assesses AO1 and AO4, and question 2, which is in section B, that assesses assessment objective 2 and 3. And as you can see there, assessment objective 5 isn't assessed in this paper. Okay, so paper 2, language in transition. Some general context about the paper, and I think by now you may be fully aware of this, but I'll just go over for clarification. It's one exam. Paper 2 is one exam. There are two sections, A and B. The timing is 1 hour and 45 minutes, which is the same as paper 1 as well. But this time the weightings are equal. There are 25 marks for section A and 25 for section B, whereas in paper 1, if you are aware, it was 35 marks for section A and 15 for section B. In this paper, it's equally weighted between the two sections. The focus on this paper is on non-UK varieties of English, typically the Creoles or the Pidgins. 3 texts are provided in the source booklet, 1 transcript and 2 written pieces. Section A focuses on contemporary spoken language, exemplified through a transcript. Section B requires candidates to discuss how the chosen variety reflects the development of English across the world. So you can see that there is a progression there. The section A is the transcript, and then section B opens it up to enable the candidates to discuss how this variety reflects the development of English across the world. Okay, so the varieties that have been included recently: Caribbean forms, for example, Antiguan and Barbudan. That's the most recent one. It was in June 2024. In January 2017 was South Asian variety. In January 2019 was the Southeast Asian variety. In June 2022, the African variety. North American variety was focused upon in the January 2018, the Australasian variety in June 2018 as well. It may be noted here that the varieties from the Caribbean have tended to be the most frequently set up, used up until now, and actually including the last paper as well, which was June 2024. So they tend to be the most frequently focused upon. So let's focus now on to section A specifically. This is the rubric for the section A question from June 2024. And I would like to say that apart from the actual naming of the specific variety, which in this case is the Antiguan and Barbudan Creole English, the rubric is always the same for section A and it's always the same for section B. So let me read it to you. Text A contains examples of Antiguan and Barbudan Creole English. Explore the connections between this variety and standard forms of English. You should refer to the following language frameworks and levels as appropriate: phonology, morphology, lexis, syntax, discourse. This paper predicates standard forms of English and candidates need to understand what this means. So that rubric, the text A down to the last bullet point, is the same for, as I said, all papers, all section A. And when we come to section B, that will be the same as well. And the only thing that changes is the variety, which is here the Antiguan and Barbudan Creole English. We're going to move on to looking at this in focus of the standard forms. Obviously, classroom activities here, students need to know what standard forms of English, what it means, before they can then look at the different varieties as well. Okay, let's jump into our first activity. Keep you all awake, just in case you're nodding off. So for this reason, obviously in section A, the concept of an acrolectal variety is important, as this is effectively where the assessment objective 4 requirement for making connections sits. Let me just maybe clarify if you're not too familiar with it. Acrolect is the language of variety of a speech community, which is closest to the standard or the prestige form of a language. This is not a scientific activity that we're going to do. We're just going to try and match the variety to its best fit acrolect. Okay, so and I don't quite know where you are in the world, so some of you might actually put your hand up and discuss this and say, no, that's not true. Well, that's fine. This is not a scientific, it's just a bit of a taster activity. And let's see how we go. It might lead to some discussion, but hey ho, let's have fun. So the variety here, we have Hawaiian, we have Indonesian, and we have Nigerian variety. And the acrolect here, we have standard Australian English, we have standard British English, and we have standard American English. They're not in the right order. You have to match the acrolect to the variety. Okay, just probably will only take about 30 seconds. And as I said, it's not a scientific experiment here, and it may not be absolutely accurate, but this is something that is worth maybe using with your students as well in the classroom, just to get them to realise what an acrolect is as well. Okay. So let me look at the group chat. Let's see what's going on. Yeah, okay, viewing and things. Yeah, Hansel is on that. Thank you very much, Hansel. So let us move on. Have I gone back too much? Let me do this. It's not moving forward. Yes, it is. Here we go. So we're matching the variety. This could be, it says the answers may be that this is the solution that you came to, is that the Hawaiian is the standard American English acrolect, simply because of its proximity to America, to the US. Indonesian, their acrolect would be the standard Australian English, arguably, or maybe not. You might have something to say about that. And the Nigerian variety, the acrolect would be the standard British English, probably due to colonial history. as I say, it's very much up for discussion. Hawaiian, Standard American, Indonesian. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. We've got Jade and Eugene. Hello, Eugene. You were here on Monday, weren't you? Alexandra, I think you were as well. So fabulous. Nice to see you back. Let's move on. So the acrolectal variety will have standard forms of morphology. The inflection plurality, for example, the lexis, the nouns, verbs, and so on, syntax, subject, verb agreement, and features from the transcript are connected with these. There may not be as many morphological examples in some varieties because a lot of these regional forms are pretty much standard in this respect. And so students or candidates, when they're writing about morphology, that paragraph or that aspect of their text might not be as in-depth as other aspects may be because there's not much to say, okay? So they don't have to be of equal length and depth when they are referring to these. In such cases, it is acceptable for candidates to assert that the transcript is largely or entirely standard form from a morphological point of view, like I've just said. Okay, so in recent series, many candidates have successfully identified what the acrolectal varieties may have shifted for a number of reasons over the course of its development. The acrolectal variety shifts, it doesn't stay the same, and there are reasons for that. And it's been quite successful from candidates to have identified how this shift has occurred over time. And that is something that can be covered in as classroom practice as well. In the case of the June 2024, for example, there's no doubt that the colonial history of the Caribbean would have meant that standard British English has been the acrolect, but that this may well have changed to standard American English due to the influence of US media or trade, for example. And students are quite hot on realizing this, and they bring that into their answers, which is great. Okay. Further, the often adduced factoid, facts and figures, that 80% of the internet has as its medium of communication English, and that American English is now dominant, is a factor, especially where text A is derived from an online source. You can see the connection there. The transcript, which is the text A in the source booklet, is always the transcript, and this students can often figure out how it has evolved, how it has changed over time, and the medium not being standard English anymore, that it's moved to American English, pretty well due to things like YouTube and Medium and films and movies and lots of things being American English nowadays. Okay, so candidates are expected to be familiar with and able to use the IPA, which is the International Phonemic Alphabet. Maybe you are aware of this, maybe you are quite proficient in it, maybe it's completely new to you. So there is a version of this in the source booklet. So in your delegates pack, there is a source booklet with the 3 texts, and this is always produced in the source booklet in this exam. However, candidates, although they don't need to memorize it, they should actually know it quite confidently. They should probably become sufficiently familiar with it that they can use it with confidence. And there are lots of wonderful, fun activities you can do with this in the classroom to get them familiar with this IPA. And we're actually going to do one of them in a moment. It can be a challenge for some learners to understand what the IPA intends and why it would be used and how it applies. But essentially, we're dealing here with accent and not technically dialect. So it's how a word is pronounced rather than a new word. And here we go. I did promise it to you, and here it is. So activity 2, IPA can be fun. What do I want you to do? Hey, Using the IPA in the June 2024 source booklet, which you probably have in front of you by now, which is part of the delegate pack, or if not, maybe you know this so well you don't need to refer to it and you really fancy a challenge. This is your opportunity to shine. What I would like you to do is write your first name. It's not going to be able to put this in the chat box, but maybe you've got some notes in front of you. Find out how you could write your name as it would appear phonologically. And yep, I've done it for you, but I'm a bit of a cheat really because my name is so short, it's very easy. So my name here would be written as Sue, S, and then the U with the double dot after it, which is the oo sound. Quite straightforward, you would think, but I have lived all over the world, and here in Spain, people often refer to me. In actual fact, they did this morning when I had to call my sports club over a question that I had. And when the lady answered the phone, she called me Sue, because they always do. Sue Page, Sue Page as well, Sue Page. So I can be referred to as Sue with the on the end in the IPA. So maybe your identity is your name like that, but you are identified from different people and they say your name differently. So here in Spain, I'm often referred to as Sue, which I find hilarious, but I really don't mind. So have a go at doing that. Just take a minute, have a look at the IPA and work out how you would write your name. If you've got a very long name, Alexandra, I can see you've got, oh, you are writing it in the chat box. This is amazing. Anzi, yeah, Anzi, I can see yours as well. Alexandra, if you press on the circle, okay, got it. And Louise, oh yeah, cool. Thank you for writing that. It's amazing. I love this activity. Students, candidates absolutely love it, okay? They might have a really long, complicated name. They might want to write a message to each other using IPA. And then read things out and swap them around the classroom. It's a fabulous activity. Jade. Yeah, Jade. Good. That could also be Jade in Spain, Jade, okay? Or Jade if you were in Germany. So there's lots of different ways of pronouncing our names. Fabulous. Thank you so much for joining in with that. It's great as a presenter, I sit here and I'm looking at a screen and you're all out there and sometimes I just need that interaction. So thank you so much for that. Great. Let us move on. Language in transition for paper 2. So it will be useful for candidates to know what suprasegmental variation is, or prosody. Prosody is the accent of a syllable, if you're not familiar with that. So they need to know about that as well. Stress or emphasis can be marked in bold on the transcript. So there is a way when you look at past papers, you look at past transcripts, that you can work out how things are in the written form for candidates to read. Tone is important, volume or tempo, pace, pitch. And this said, oh, we've got microphones on. Is there something you need to say? No, can you mute your mic, please? Okay, thank you. This said that the first of these is likely only to be really significant here. So the stress. Okay.
Yes, training.
Hello. Some people have got their microphones on and it's causing a bit of feedback. Can you mute your mics, please? Thank you. So the as I said, the prosody and the stress really are probably the most important ones here, the most significant. In practice, it looks like this. Okay, so this is an excerpt from the June 2024 paper. Two speakers, S and K, that's Sheba and Kania, from Antigua and Barbuda are discussing the clothing business, which one of them runs. If you look in your delegates pack, there is script 1, and on script 1 there is the transcript of the conversation, of the dialogue, and it's also in the source booklet as well. So we've got multiple forms of it here. If you look in the source booklet, it's on page 4, the dialogue between Kania and Sheba. But I've got it on the screen as well, so don't panic if you can't find it. So here is the transcript. And this is Kania and Sheba. And so they're trying to tell you, or yeah, even if anyone come with any random color. Kania, long as we can source it, you hot. Take it from me. Y'all heard it here first. Y'all heard it yourself. So no matter the color, no matter the texture, once we have it, that is, or what you are gone, get it. Okay, it's quite difficult to say it in 2 forms, but there is the IPA in amongst the transcript. Okay, the students do not need to speak out loud when they're doing this. They just need to understand what's going on with it. And this is from the June 2024 paper. Okay, so let's move on a little bit. What I want you to do is using that. So if you've got some idea, this is activity 3 now, I want you to try and identify one phonological, one lexical, and one grammatical issue from this extract, and it's there on the screen for you. So if you can just try and find, there are various ones, it's not a right or wrong answer, there are various ones that you might wish to choose, but one phonological, one lexical, and one grammatical, and just a couple of minutes to do that. You can write on the chat box for that, or you can just use it as an activity in classroom practice, something like that you want to practice phonology, lexis, and grammar with your students. Okay, so they're trying to tell you, even if anyone come with any random color, Kania, long as we can source it, you have to take it from me. Y'all heard it here first. Y'all heard it yourself. So no matter the color, no matter the texture, once we have it, that is what you're gonna get it. Okay. So a couple of seconds. What have we got going on here? Good. Thank you, Jade. Anastasia. Yeah. Fabulous. Yeah. Anastasia. Wonderful. Yeah. You've got the gist. It's not too difficult. You've got to take these tasks, as I say, just try them. Yeah. Have a go. Be confident. And get your students to have the confidence as well. Don't get them feeling afraid or being distant from an activity. They've got to jump in there and have a look. Subject verb agreement, Eugene. Yeah, they're trying as long as you hot grammatical. Yeah, good. Lots of fabulous. I'm going to then move on if we've got that going on. Let's see. We've got y'all. This is obviously not exclusive, an exhaustive list. You've got lots of ideas as well. So y'all is interesting that it probably indicates the influence of American forms on this one. So what I would like as well, which is so important for the candidates, is that they can identify them, which was what your activity was, but then to take that further and to try and explain or evaluate or think about it, analyze it in a contextual manner as well. So the y'all is interesting and that probably indicates the influence of American forms. So that's the phonology one. Hot is lexical. Yeah, mentioned that one as well. Hot seems to connote good, and it's a typical of the modern usage, which draws on the conduit metaphor relating to figurative uses of temperature. Yeah, hot is good. So that is a lexical extract there. And then we can move on to grammatical. They trying, and quite a few of you have mentioned this in the chat box as well, they trying amidst the primary auxiliary tense marker are. So they should be saying they are trying. So all of these things can be said as typical. Okay, they could be typical. Lots of discussion possibilities with your students here when they're talking about things, especially with the idea of the good is the modern language, how things have evolved over time and what they used to mean. It's not even hot nowadays with teenagers around the world. There's all sorts of different language that they use, lexis that they use to connote when something is good. Okay, thank you for that activity. So candidates must avoid a prescriptive approach, and this is important. It happens less and less now because teaching is so good and it covers past papers and it covers the depth due to the examiner's comments and everything. So we know what we're going to teach our students, but they should avoid this prescriptive approach. They should refer to variant features as non-standard or ungrammatical. They should avoid saying things are bad or wrong when discussing things. Okay, don't this is a slip in value judgment, and yes, it does happen, and that's okay to a certain extent, but if these slips are sustained, then they are likely to lead to lower attainment. So the avoidance of using wrong, variant or bad language rather than using that it's non-standard or ungrammatical. Many candidates are by now aware of this, as I said, and appear well informed about the developments of pidgins and creoles and the concepts and issues which apply to their evolution from a linguistic and socio-cultural point of view. A slip-up's okay, but it should not be sustained, basically. Zoraida, hello, welcome back. Yes, it is necessary to teach the terminology related to place and manner of articulation. That's in the chat box. I'm referring to that as well. They shouldn't refer to anything unless they're comfortable using it. So just mentioning some form of terminology. If they can't actually, I call it deep sea diving. If they can't go the whole way with it and explain and evaluate and try and talk it in a contextual manner, then they're not going to get very far with it. So yes, it is worth covering that, Zaid, absolutely. Okay, let us move on to yeah, there are bullet points in the rubric I showed you a little while ago. Candidates do not need to deal with the bullet points in the order that they come. So phonology, morphology, and lexis, syntax and discourse. They don't need to deal with them in that order in the bullet points, and they don't need to deal with them in equal measure. I did mention that before. As stated before, there may be more to say about phonology than morphology because the variety in question is morphologically hard to distinguish from the acrolectal form. They are advised to at least attempt some comment on syntax though. Okay, for example, they could discuss both sentence type and sentence function. So yes, they should refer to all bullet points, but they may not be in equal depth. For the purpose of this paper, sentence types are simple, complex, compound, and compound complex. This needs to be covered with your students. Sentence functions are statements, questions, command, and exclamation. Okay, so we've got the sentence forms or sentence types, and then we've got sentence functions. It's not usually helpful to say that speech has no grammar or no syntax. That's not going to get them very far. A successful candidate might say that speech grammar has recognizable patterns and rules of syntax, and that tense can be identified in the extract. Okay, it's like saying in poetry to say it doesn't rhyme. Yeah, okay, but it's not called that. So you have to just be aware of being too generic in what they say. Okay, what are some of the syntactical issues in this section of the June 2024 text A? So what could a candidate say about sentence type and function here? This is our next activity. We're further down, if you look at the transcript in the source booklet, or if you're on script 1, whichever variety you're looking at, it's still the same. Just looking further down, we start with K, or Kania, is saying just bring your combinations. So just bring your combinations. You're helping us get better, and we helping you come and help me increase our color scheme, and plus you still get what you want. Okay, so what I want you to try and do here, obviously, if you're not familiar with it, I'm not assuming that you're all familiar with this paper or of the A-level English language. Syntactical is the word order, or the arrangement of words and phrases in order to create that well-formed sentence. So the sentence function type here and function. Having a look at it, okay, just bring your combinations. What can we say about that? You're helping us get better, and we're helping you come and help me increase our color scheme, and plus you still get what you want. Can you say anything there about the sentence type or the function? Anything going on? It's a command. Thank you very much. Multi-clause sentence. Thank you very much. Yeah, we have an imperative form. Well done. Good. Thank you for your contributions there. So let's have a look. Candidates might comment on the use of the imperative. Well done. Just bring your combinations. So how this is reflective of the context or the sentence type. They might also discuss the fact that the micropauses, sort of the dots in the parenthesis there, the micropauses appear to work as speech punctuation, separating the simple sentence of the first part of the utterance from the compound sentence of the second form, from you're helping. And that this syntactical patterning is again typical of this kind of online content. So we've got the you're helping us get better, and we're helping you come and help me increase. So there we have then the compound sentence following a simple sentence. Okay, other activities that candidates can do are things like this. Okay, they can work in groups, they can obviously work individually, and they can just become more confident with approaching texts like this. Okay, so moving on, we have terminology, as I mentioned, and I mention this every paper that we cover. Terminology is important in the exam, as in every exam, but it shouldn't be used without purpose. If a candidate isn't sure what some form of terminology is, they should avoid employing it. And I'm using the example here of relaxification. If they don't know what it means, then just avoid it. Just leave it alone. Sustaining an answer is obviously a key to success. So this is the next point as well. Pupils always, for every paper, but I'm pointing it out for this paper as well, they ask, what about the word count? How much should I write, miss? What should I do, sir? And there's no simple answer, as always. Some candidates write 600 words and do extremely well. Others write more than 1,000 and attain modestly. So basically, I always say that it's quality, not necessarily quantity, although that doesn't necessarily rule it out, but it is quality. Whatever is being produced needs to be orderly, relevant, informed, accurate, and well expressed. Okay. Fabulous. Okay, so let us move on even further. We're going to look at this in greater length later on in section B, but theory is important. And it's important in all of the exams as well. You can't really get much further than even level 2 if you don't mention some form of theory. So things that key concept that might be included in this: prescriptivism and descriptivism. So looking at theories around that. Creolization, assimilation, convergence, and divergence. speech act theory and the golden age, and other concepts as well. Prescriptivism being the attitude or belief that one variety of a language is superior to others, and focuses on how language should be used according to a set of rules or standards. But descriptivism then describes in an objective manner how language is actually being used. Okay, so prescriptive and descriptivism. Creolization is obvious. Assimilation, I'm hoping. Assimilation and the convergence and divergence. So assimilation when sounds become similar. Convergence when speech is modified to become more similar to that of others. And divergence, obviously, is the opposite, is when speech is modified to create or amplify difference to others. Okay, this is an important issue for this exam and should be looked at in some depth with your students. Lots of possibilities there for research and work on these theories. So we're going to move on to our first marking activity. This is our activity 5, but it's marking activity 1. And what I would like you to do is, obviously, we're going to mark something as a preliminary exercise. It's just a jumping in exercise. It's nothing, again, too scientific or in-depth. Remember, please, that the best candidates do much more than simply feature spot. Just by mentioning things and jumping around and trampolining from one thing to the next is not going to get them very far. It doesn't happen as much as it used to, but it still does crop up. So we need to ensure that when we're teaching students that, yes, when they can spot something, but then they have to take it further. I always use the analogy that they're on the surface of the water, they're just swimming, which is when they're feature spotting. They do a bit of snorkeling, which means they start researching what that means, but they're not too confident, but they're all right. They're just looking around at the fish. Okay, they're looking, but they're not doing much with it. And then they deep sea dive, which means they're really going as far and as deep and as much as they possibly can. And this is what they need to do. They need to deep sea dive. That's my analogy. You use various forms. So a simple connection between an identified feature of variation and the form which it might have taken in the acrolect. For example, previously in the activity when it said, this misses out the verb are. The standard English should be they are trying. This isn't especially helpful to candidates and they won't attain many marks for this. Okay, so just spotting it, feature spotting, and then just saying in standard English it should be this, it doesn't do anything. What it needs to do is to identify by using that quotation, then analyze it as specifically as possible, connect it, contextualize it, and comment upon it. So that's my deep sea diving. Okay, so this a marking activity, mark scheme. So if you can get to the mark scheme in your delegates pack, which is there, and people are different. Okay, so I always say that the cover sheet is the cover sheet and page 1 is then the page after that. So according to my way of reckoning, we're looking at page 3. But if you consider the cover sheet to be page 1, then we're on page 4. As I said on Monday, when you go into a shopping mall in America, apparently you go in on floor 1. And I always think that's the ground level and you go up to floor 1. So when I'm looking at the menu of where to go for things, I always get a bit confused. So it's all different. That's just an aside, by the way. Okay, so we're looking at the mark scheme, and here it says probably 5 and 6 because on the page 3 is the indicative content, and then page 4, which it says here 5 and 6, is the actual grid. Okay, and what I would like you to do is attempt to place the opening from the June 2024 section A response. Where do you think it's heading? Okay, so It sounds confusing, but in actual fact, it isn't, because I'm going to put it on the screen for you. I'm going to read it, and it's on the screen as well. And we're just going to put it in the level that we think it is. So let's look at those levels a little bit more closely. We're looking, remember, for section A as simply assessment objective 1 and assessment objective 4. We're not doing the others, they're section B. So just for those two assessment objectives, and if you look at the top of the grid, it says assessment objective 1 are bullet points 1, 2, and 3, and assessment objective 4 are bullet points 4 and 5. So we're going to try and fit this text that it's a handwritten text. I'll read it to you. It's in a slide or two's time. And we're going to try and put it in which band you think it belongs. Remember, level 1 being descriptive, level 2 general understanding, level 3 clear relevant application, level 4 is discriminating controlled application, and level 5 is critical and evaluative. Okay, so I'm going to read it to you and then let you get on with it. Remember, as well, it's worth pointing out that we're marking positively. It doesn't mean that we're throwing ticks around like confetti here, but we're rewarding candidates for what they are doing rather than penalising them for what they're not doing. And this works throughout all of the marking system. Okay, so it is the best fit approach as well. So not everything in the descriptors has to happen for the answer to be placed in the band which stipulates them. All right, it's the best fit approach, and that's what is employed by examiners. So let us move on. Here it is. Maybe you can read it on the screen, but I will actually read it to you as well for ease. Here we go. I have to sit under my light a little bit. My apologies if I'm not looking forward. Text A is an extract from a YouTube online interview showcasing Antiguan and Barbudan Creole English. Given the island's colonial links to Britain, it is anticipated that British English was a former acrolect or superstratum, although this has likely now shifted towards American English due to increased globalization, American tourism, and physical proximity to the USA. The influence of technology, as well as growing distance from a colonial past, also influences the Creole's link to Standard English, hereafter SE. In terms of phonology, there are clear links to American English. The pronunciation of you all as y'all shows a combination of the two words as a distinctly American, and it goes on. Okay, so that's me reading it. You can have a reread and then try and fit it, remember best fit, into a level that you think it would land as this response. Remember that acrolect is the variety of speech closest to the standard form of the language. Okay, just a minute or two. Jade, just for that, which was a couple of minutes ago. Yeah, you will get a copy of the slides, I believe. Yeah, don't worry about that, Jade. You do get a copy of the slides later on when everything has been processed and everything. I think the slides are available for you. Okay, so just a couple of minutes. Have a slurp of a drink as well, which is what I'm going to do. And then try and put that text, that part of the response, remember it's only the opening to the total response, but where would you think it fits? Like I said on Monday, you're very harsh markers, very, very harsh. Okay, we've got level 3s, level 4s, level 5s, Eugene. Yeah. Okay. Positive. Very, very good. I remember being told once, well, many times actually, but the first time I was told it, in that, we make a really significant effect. We have an effect on these students' futures. What we give them can open doors to the rest of their lives. And that really hit me, in that you try and do your best for them. You try and find things there that you can credit, instead of wishing that they'd written something that they hadn't, and so you're holding them back. You want to let these students fly. You're trying to help them to spread their wings. And our job, I think, we have an awful big responsibility in order to do that. Okay, what else have we got? Okay, Michael Lee, Gary. Hello, Gary. You were on Monday, weren't you? Geraldine, I don't remember seeing your name on Monday, but welcome. So, okay, let's boogie on. This is actually a very good start from the student. Okay, and they, oh, I don't want to go on to level 2. I don't want to do that. Just, hey, hold your horses. The marking would probably have been placed into this marking activity number 1, would possibly be in a very high level 4, or even into a level 5, depending how it continued. At this level, it was a very good level 4. And as it continued, it eventually, the whole of the response attained a level band 5. But at this point, it was the very good start, the strength. And that's also worth mentioning to students as well, in that, you don't get that second chance at a first impression. What they write initially in their response actually sets the tone for the rest of their script. Warming up to a good answer isn't necessarily a good idea. They need to have the confidence to start strong, because that's where the band is placed, the level is placed at the beginning, and then hopefully that it actually improves by the end of the response. Okay, so if you got that in a level 4 or a low level 5, then well done you. Good. So we've got here quite a few level 4s there. Michael Lee, did you actually level 4? Yeah, you improved that one. Don't be so harsh, Michael Lee. Be kind to your students. Encourage them. Support them. Right, here we go. So we're going on to activity 6 now, another art marking activity, our second one. And we're looking in, this one is not on the screen. It's a typewritten response. It's script 1. So in your delegates pack, you have 2 scripts, script 1 and script 2. If you look at script 1, then you can see it. It is on the second page of your script. So the first one is the first page is actually that transcript between Kania and Sheba. And then over the page, there is in the box, that's the response from the candidate to the first question. So it's the section A question. And it begins with text A is a spoken conversation that has been transcribed. It goes over the page, and in actual fact, this response was 1,053 words. So quite a long response in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 paragraphs. As I said, it starts with text A is a spoken conversation that has been transcribed, taken from an interview posted on YouTube. And so it continues. So this might take a while for you to, but if we are kind to our students, Eugene, when they receive their marks, and there's a totally different band difference, what can we do? No, you're kind, yes. Kind does not mean you're throwing away marks like confetti, like I said, Eugene. You have to be accurate. You have to be relevant to but the more that you do this, and the more that you look at the examiner's reports, and the more that you use, I'll talk about that. I did talk about it on Monday, and I know you were there as well. Use the mark scheme in your teaching practice. The teaching strategy is using the mark scheme so that students know what they should be aiming for. And then as a marker, you actually credit them for what they write. Okay. The mark scheme is, it's not just very, it's vital, okay? It's not a secret document that just used for examiners and teachers. You know, the students should be working with the mark scheme in their lessons, in their course. Yeah, good, John. Glad you like that thumbs up there from you. Fabulous. So moving on, we're looking at the script 1 in the delegates pack, which is from the June 2024 paper. Again, this is what we're focusing on today. Using the grid from the mark scheme, remember we are still on section A, okay? We've not moved to section B yet. So we're still looking at A01 and A04. Just place it in the level which you think it deserves. Okay. Might take time. You don't actually need to read all of it, guys. It's just you should be able to sort of say, okay, it's whatever, rather than it's definitely this. You don't need to actually give it the mark out of 25. You just need to be able to place it in a band at this stage. This is just for the purpose of the presentation today, just to get used to having a look at work and seeing where it might be placed. Okay. Okay. Any level? Okay, Anastasia, thank you very much. You said it's level 5. Okay. You're getting good. Getting good. Fabulous. I wish I could see all of your pictures, all of you, so I could feel as though I'm talking to somebody instead of the screen, but I haven't got space on my monitor for all of you. Sorry. Okay, what else have we got here? Anastasia, anybody else apart from Anastasia? I feel as though I should be at an auction thing. Any advance on 5 or any whatever? Yeah, great, Anzi. So I think you're on the right lines here. Yeah, despite some slips, yeah, Zoraida. So it is actually a high level 4. It possibly could get into a level 5, but I'll just say that this was actually awarded. Let me have a look at the actual result. It was actually awarded 20 out of 25. And I always hate putting students right on the borderline, but this was a very high level 4 in end. It wasn't me who marked it, by the way. We're talking about the examiners, the hierarchy of examiners. So the awarding body gave it actually 20 out of 25. So very high level 4. It's a confident and clear response, well organized and competently written. It makes good use of terminology and analyzes effectively. It exemplifies well, although some of the IPA symbols are missing. So I think that was your comment there, the few slips there. Zoraida, yeah. This is likely to have been due to the difficulty of copying them from an IPA onto a typed answer, possibly, yeah. So here it offers sound, sustained exploration, competent connection, and a secure methodology for the AS level. Remember, the advanced subsidiary level at A04. So well done. That is the level that it was placed in, level 4, getting 20 out of 25. Okay, so that, how could they have improved it? They could have improved it if they had contextualized their analysis a little bit more. Okay, but if you actually place it in a level 5, that is absolutely fine as well, because it was really on the borderline there. Okay, as long as you didn't give it a high level 5, but if it was in top 4 or bottom 5, you're absolutely spot on. Well done. Okay, Jade. Okay. You are more than welcome, Jade. Okay, thank you. Okay. Is to put it into context, Ada. If they actually analyze it and then they put it into the context of the script a little bit more rather than generalizing it, actually specifically put it into the context of this particular script that they're mentioning in that part of their response. Also, the comments on syntax could have been developed a little bit further. And also, which stood out as well, is that there wasn't actually more of an overview as a conclusion. If you look at the last paragraph regarding discourse, the interview, it doesn't actually draw it all together, and so the structure of it seemed to be just that little bit lacking to put it firmly in a 5, although it could easily have been at the bottom level 5. So it was an excellent response. Okay, let us have a well-being break. Okay, we've already had just over an hour, so we've got plenty of time to do section B. And I think you probably deserve a drink. Let me see, Dad belong. Okay, all right, I will try and address some of these specific comments in the text box, in the chat box as you go and enjoy. So you can switch your mics off. They're never on, were they? Okay, just go and enjoy for how long should we say? 5 minutes, is that enough? 10 minutes max? What would you say? 8 minutes? It's we've been on this, it's 8 minutes past the hour. We're going to the top of the hour. So I think probably 5 or 6 minutes. If you come back, and we'll start in 10 minutes. Make the decision, Sue. 10 minutes it is. Okay, go. Oh, 5 is great, says Michael Lee. All right, you've overridden me. All right, 5 is great, Michael Lee. Okay, thank you. 5 minutes it is. All right, thank you. Off you go. Enjoy your break. Hi, John. Just getting back to you before you disappear. It's an honor to have you at the presentation. So thank you very much. Enjoy your session, your next session. It would be nice if you're coming back to the following presentations, which are next Monday and next Wednesday as well. Look forward to that. But thank you very much for your kind comments. Anzi, I don't know if you can hear me or if you've disappeared, but when you're feature spotting in syntax, yes, obviously you're going to look at the formation of the words in the sentence, but then you can take that further by then going into focusing on the grammar side of it and why things have been probably used in a different structure, why the sentence has been changed. Go into maybe the, sorry, is that Anzi? Sorry. Maybe I should talk when
Did I get my name?
Is that Anzi? Is that you?
Yes, that's me. I was just
Okay,
on my
hi.
mic.
All right, no, I just thought maybe while the break is on, to try and address your question there. How do you go beyond feature spotting in syntax? Well, obviously, yeah, the first thing is you spot what the problem is or what the issue is with the syntax, which is obviously the word order in the sentence. But then you can draw that out. It's like the stone hitting the water and the ripple that comes out. You associate that with maybe how it's been impacted by the grammar. Maybe that's been impacted by the evolution of the language. Maybe the fact that it has been taken over or been used by by American English rather, or it's had the influence from other languages, and that's why the syntactical features have changed over time. So it's not just the fact that you've mentioned it, but you actually give some evaluation or analysis or maybe some reason as to why this might have happened. And obviously, like we've said in the activities, it's never a right or wrong thing, but actually having the confidence to mention something rather than just saying the sentence structure is different or the sentence structure isn't grammatically correct. That doesn't achieve the marks. The student has to actually go a little bit further and say why that could possibly be. That's basically what that's saying. Does that make sense?
Um, it does. I'm just thinking of, because some of the structures that you see in the Creoles are similar to Old English, like the double negatives, and sometimes the
Yeah,
word order that is just not the same as um, as the standard English is. Can they connect to Old English and say that it's, maybe, I don't know,
absolutely.
how can you?
Absolutely. When you know, in the classroom practice, when you're researching how things come about and why it might be used, historically is just as important as things that are happening now in the present, what's happening in the modern world. How things have developed historically is absolutely important. So they can mention that as well. And remember, at this level, um, everything is possible. I think English is the most beautiful subject because it's not like maths where it's either right or wrong. As long as a student can give a reasonable um, evaluation or a reasonable suggestion as to why something might have happened, and if possible, back it up with theories or historical aspects, then that's
Mm, mm,
brilliant.
mm.
You know, giving them the confidence
Because
to do it is
yeah,
important.
because I'm just thinking of the LGBT community now, who is using the pronoun they for singular and plural, and that is something that you found in Old English. So it's not as if they invented something; they repurposed something old for a different purpose. My head's just spinning it, but they can make these connections when they do come up.
Absolutely, they can make these connections. And I'm not really sure.
Okay.
Were you around on the Monday session? Um,
No, I
where
missed it. I'm on the waiting list. So I'm
oh
really
right. Well, on
hoping
the
there would
Monday
be
session
another
we talked
session.
about we talked about identity and language and identity, which is paper one. And in that aspect, we talked about gender quite a lot and the sensitivities of gender nowadays. But in actual fact, that it's rooted in history as well. And that students, if they're made
Mm,
aware of that,
mm,
it's a
mm, mm.
great topic for discussion. And obviously, being adhering to all the sensitivities that are going on with aspects nowadays. But you know, this is a great form or a topic for discussion with students, and they get really enthusiastic about it as well.
Mm,
And they
mm,
love working with history and with their lives because obviously they're in tune with American English a lot. They're in tune with YouTube and all the media that's going on, and they can see how language is developing. You know, in their lifetime, probably words have changed already. So It's very interesting, and they should be encouraged to use that knowledge rather than shy away from it.
Mm. Mm. Thank you.
Okay, does that help you? Have you had a break?
Yes, it does.
I need,
Yes, I
yeah.
have.
Okay, I'm going to put my my camera back on now. My mic's already on, but I'll put my camera back on, and I think we'll move forwards a little bit. People are probably now waiting. Okay, let me go back up to the top of my screen. Come on, where are you? There we are. Okay, everybody. So welcome back. If you've brought your drink back with you, don't spill it on your screens. Right, let's move on. I've had a chat as well during the break, talking about the issues of syntax, and a couple of people have had to leave the meeting going on to other things, but you are more than welcome to join in future sessions as well. Let's move on to section B. Okay, so this is paper 2, remember, language in transition, and we're looking at section B, compulsory question number 2. Okay, so let's look at the rubric for the June 2024 paper, which, as I said at the beginning of the presentation, is the same each year. It says, read texts A and B and C in the source booklet before answering question 2. Write your answer in the space provided. Discuss how this variety of Antiguan and Barbudan Creole English reflects the development of English across the world. So this is part of the paper now where they've focused in section A about a particular transcript, and now they're actually going to talk about how this reflects the development of English across the world. And as always, there are bullet points, so you should consider the contexts in which this variety of English is used, other influences on this variety of language, how the role of English as an international language is reflected in the texts, and you must refer closely to the text in the source booklet in your response. And there are, same as question 1, equally weighted, 25 marks available for this section. Okay. And remember the assessment objectives for this, just make sure I'm giving you the right information. Assessment objective 2 and assessment objective 3, so the ones that have not been used so far. Okay, so now we're looking at how then this variety of Antiguan and Barbudan Creole English reflects the development of English across the world. Even though we are focusing on AO2 and AO3 in this part of the exam, rather, candidates should refer to all 3 texts. Now, some candidates think, oh, I've used text A, I'm not using it for section B, but they need to use it as well. So they need to use all 3, A, B, and C in this part of the exam. However, that can be tricky because they should avoid using repetition. Things that they've already used in section A, you don't get double the marks for the same information kind of thing. So you should avoid repetition. So maybe looking at text A more holistically through a conceptual or theoretical lens, as opposed to revisiting the section A answer might be more useful. So they do have to refer to text A, but not just by repeating the same information. Okay, so by using it more holistically, that might be a way forward for them. This could entail taking a discursive position. Remember, discursive being then the kind of the pattern of what's going on in there, what it's used for in relation to the general role of the variety in its speech community, and contextualizing this alongside the information contained in the other text. They need to actually address text A as well as B and C. Those are, by the way, these are the examiner's report for the June 2024, this isn't just me talking now, this is the examiner's report. There is no requirement for candidates to have specific detailed knowledge of the exemplified variety. So it's general, okay? However, good generalizations, and there are less good generalizations as well. So that can be something to point out. Okay, there's no stipulation that the bullet points, again, like this was section A, they don't need to be covered in the order in which they appear. Okay, so they don't need to be used in chronological order, but they have to be covered in equal depth, just like with section A, although they should all be addressed. Ignoring one of them or skirting it is likely to lead to compromised attainment. Okay, so everything should be addressed in the bullet points. Identifying the key concepts that are apparent across the three texts and then discussing them in detail, exploring the links between them, might be preferable to dealing with each text separately in a linear factor. So identifying a concept and then using each of the three texts to explore it, rather than just doing a text A, text B, and then text C. And you can see that in some of the responses as well. There'll possibly be some conceptual overlap in the sources. Okay, that's self-explanatory. For example, the context of its use might be very much linked to other influences on a variety. Yeah. In the case of Antigua and Barbuda, the Caribbean region, having been especially subject to the vicissitudes of colonialism, is linked to the influence not only of standard British English, but also African and other languages. Vicissitudes, I'm sure you know, but if you're not familiar with it, is the natural change over time. Okay, so the vicissitudes of colonialism, so the natural change of colonialism over time. Okay, is not only linked to standard British English, but also African and other languages as well. So, June 2024, the key conceptual and issue-based connections. What was in this paper? Diachronic change and synchronic variation. Okay, so the issue-based connections in this paper included that, the overt and covert prestige, assimilation, convergence and divergence, the importance of oral tradition, the role of language in shaping and sustaining identity, which is a continuation from paper 1, the roles of the acrolectal forms in the process of creolization, and the roles of other contributing languages and dialects in the process of creolization. Contextual factors shaping the Creole, example here, obviously colonialism, commerce, mass and local media, education, governmental and political concerns, technology and communicative mediums. Obviously, these things may well apply to other varieties, of course, not just to the Antigua and Barbudan variation, but to other varieties too. Just an aside, if you're not too familiar with them, just to make it more for the purpose of clarity, diachronic is the way language has developed or evolved. Synchronic is the study of language at a particular time. Overt prestige being related to the standard or formal language features and is expressed, usually used through power and status. Covert prestige is related then to the informal or indirect language and expresses group identity more than then the authority, as opposed to overt. Assimilation, the speech community shifts allegiance to another language. They sort of merge together, they assimilate. Or convergence, we talked about this before, is the language, the influence that is borrowed, adapted or evolved from each other. People often accommodate their language speech to others without even realizing they speak more correctly when they're talking to adults or teachers, for example, and they change their language rather than to when they're talking to their peers. And divergence is then the natural process where language changes in different ways, in different places, often leading to geographical variations of the language. So there's lots of work there for classroom use. As with section A, the following factors are crucial. So although we are looking at section B, section A factors are important. The relevance, obviously, analytical accuracy, use of appropriate meta language in terms of how meaning is constructed through broader contextual and specific language features. So it might include, for example, the commentary on lexicosemantic issues. These are, I put in brackets there in the parenthesis, that the which assessment objectives they refer to. Specific meaningful quotations from the text, obviously, and evaluation. This might take the form of, for example, the point on its journey in which this variety finds itself. So typicality compared to other forms, the ways in which the variety is used, the significance of the variety, or the individual and group identity. This one isn't actually expressed in the mark scheme, but organisation and expression. Yeah, as I said, these are not being expressly assessed themselves. My apologies, but they are significant because basically, if the marker can't read the response and it can't be followed, it's going to be harder to judge and it's going to be harder to gain those higher levels. And that's a really important one. Please let me have just a sip. Sorry. So, my apologies. One approach that proved successful in the June 2024 paper was to identify the acrolect, which in this case would historically have been standard British English. Then proceed to comment on the shaping influences which are raised in the next three texts. Sorry, in all of the three texts, in the next two texts. So looking and focusing at the historical aspect and then working from that base forwards. So briefly rereading the text in the source booklet. This is an activity, but I don't expect you to go through all of those three texts to read them in depth, maybe just skimming over them just to get an idea of what they are about. Is going to be helpful here. And what I would like you to try and do is to find the links, find the connecting concepts and issues. What are they broadly? What connects those three texts? What are the concepts that are connecting the three of them? So just skim over, see if you can scan through anything and find something that you can, in this case, cherry pick and find out anything that any concepts that are connecting them, any issues that are connecting them, broadly speaking, of course. I'll leave you that for a minute. Excuse me. I had this wonderful throat spray. It helps. And if you've got it when you're teaching and you're talking constantly for a couple of hours, it's based honey. It's wonderful. Okay, so in the source booklet, this is my source booklet, you've got the three texts, just running through them. The first one is the transcript. I don't know if you've managed to read all of it now, but find out if there's anything that links that with text B, which is an extract from an article published in 2023 in the Antigua Observer website, which provides news in Antigua and Barbuda. The article titles, Are We Lubum, in celebration of dialect? Put the spotlight on local dialect to mark the International Mother's Day, or Mother Language Day. Okay, and then moving on to text C then is the collection of Antiguan folk tales. and that's based really from history. The stories were told to an interviewer in 1920 who recorded them to preserve the oral storytelling tradition. And text C contains extracts from the introduction, giving some information about Antiguan folklore and storytelling, as well as one short story from the collection. Okay. Hansel, I think possibly if you're listening in here, can a delegate back be shared, please, to Shabina? Geraldine, I think that's a great text that you've written there. I'm new to teaching Edexcel and I find this part of the paper intriguing. Enjoy it. It's fabulous. I love this exam. I get quite crazy about teaching English. Okay, so let's have a look. Let's move on. So here we have text A. The speakers exemplify Antiguan, Barbudan, Creole in action. They speak about the variety as something of which they are proud and which is crucial, a crucial act of their identity. Text B comments on the role of mother languages, offers some lexical examples and discusses the connection between variety and identity. And text C provides context in a highly formal register connected with folklore and offers folkloric example of the variety in that actual story that's there as well. So if you found that those were the connections, as I say, it was just a quick activity there to get students. This is a great activity to use a past paper and to try and have the three papers there, the three texts, and to actually identify things, highlight things that have in common throughout the three texts. A great activity. Gets them being confident with approaching things in text. It's all about confidence. In approaching languages, different variations on language. Okay, another effective approach here is to look at rooting the materials in a theoretical base and proceeding from there. And as I said previously, even to attain a level 2, you do need to have covered some theories with students. And for example, here are a list of various theories. I'm not going to go into them because we do not have time to focus on these. You may be familiar with them, you may not be familiar with them, but this is a task that it could be used with colleagues in a department. It can be used with students as well. Okay, so and this is obviously not a prescriptive or an exhaustive list, but there are some, it's on the slide, so I'm going to move on from it now. But Halliday, obviously, the relexification theory that I mentioned before, lingua franca is there. Anyway, let's move on, but there is a list of them and there are many, many more too. Okay, so moving forwards. A note on discourse, I mentioned this in paper 1 as well. Much of what's said, paper 1 regarding discourse equally applies in paper 2. Candidates are encouraged to consider some of the following factors when answering section B, many of which address the requirement to discuss context. So they need to consider field, function, mode, audience. In addition, candidates often consider spoken language features of text A, like the micropauses, the repetitions, the fillers, and so on. This sort of discussion is made much more useful when it's related to the generic structure of the text. In the case of the last year's text A, the YouTube clip, which was set, contained a number of elements which are characteristic of these items. Okay, so marking activity number 8. Let's do some marking here for section B. The points still are important. Positive marking, not throwing them around like confetti, but also being aware of marking them for what they have achieved rather than penalising them for what they've not written. Have a look at section B, indicative content in the mark scheme. So the indicative content is probably on page 6, but there again we differ in our page numbers. But excuse me, in the mark scheme on page 6 you have indicative content. Remember, we're now in section B. So in mine, I've labelled it as page 5 and then over the page to page 6, but you may call it page 6 and page 7. Okay, the question number 2, indicative content. It's labelled there context, the influence of other languages, the role of English as an international language, and then there are various bullet points detailing those 3. And then over the page, on the actual mark grid itself, remember we are looking at assessment objective 2 and assessment objective 3, and those are the 5 levels. Assessment objective 2 is being referred to through bullet points 1 and 2 on the grid, and assessment objective 3, bullet points 3 and 4 on the grid. Okay, so moving on. Comments about the indicative content. It's really it's self-explanatory. I think it's more a case of reading it and it indicates the content, of what's in that text, in that question rather. Looking at the influences of other languages, and it goes through each of the texts A, B, and C. So I think it's quite self-explanatory for that. And then the grid is on the following page. So have a look at the AO grid, the mark scheme, we've done that, and look at this response here is script 2. So if you look in your delegates pack, it is itemized as script 2. And it's actually right at the back, so it's quite easy to find. Okay, it's the last 2 pages. It's in the box, it's typewritten, so it's quite easy to read. And it starts with the first way in which Antiguan and Barbudan Creole reflects the development of English across the world is through the contextual present, contextual present in all 3 texts. I think there's a bit of a spelling error, a sort of grammatical issue there. The world is through the contextual present in all 3 texts. Okay, so that was the topic sentence from this candidate for the response. Okay. Have a little look. You do not need to read all of it. It was 926 words. And it does mention some of the theories. So paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3, and then a little conclusion at the end, just a 1-sentence conclusion at the end. Okay, skim over it, and as I say, it's not a scientific activity, it's just where would you place it. So get a general idea of where you think this belongs. Just a minute or 2, and then we will move on. Let me have a look. Okay, Shabina, did Hansel get back to you with that? As it says on the screen in front of you as well, guys, if you feel super confident, you can go for a specific mark, but don't worry about it. Okay, just by looking at the answer to a candidate's response for a question 2, section B of paper 2, that's what you would ideally find. Where would you put it? Hey, is there anybody still out there? Talk to me. Yes, thank you, Anastasia. Thank you. Yay. All right. I'm actually going to move on with this. Probably, I'd like somebody to give me an idea of a level before I move on. And then I will I'll let you know where it actually was. Thank you, Eugene. Spot on. Yeah, thank you, Anzi, as well. Agreed. Okay, so let us move on with that one. Remember, as I said originally, though, this is extra information. AO1's not been assessed here. So let's move on to what it was. The candidate writes in an organised way. Yes, though some of the content is a little general, there is some discrimination in the application of relevant concepts and issues, for example, the role of YouTube, which is good. That was mentioned, I think, right at the beginning in paragraph 1, if I'm correct. Understanding of concepts and issues is sensibly tied to the text. That makes it good as well, creditable. There is some inferential discussion connected to the idea of superstrate and substrate, which is mentioned in the second paragraph. Yep, so that's creditable as well. We might not agree entirely with the candidate at all times, but in the circumstances, much of what they are doing is credit-worthy in this respect. Fabulous. And there are relevant links to contextual factors and language features, which is positive, especially as the answer gathers momentum. And then there is some worthwhile reference to theory. It's not very much, I think, to what is mentioned in theory. Yeah, Cachreau, yeah, in the second paragraph, links to Cachreau's circle model. Yeah, it is mentioned, so theory is mentioned as well and elaborated upon, so that is commendable too. So where did we put it? We're not expecting an undergraduate standard of work, which is what I'm coming to all the time with this. And I used the word kind, maybe that wasn't really appropriate. You have to be correct, but you have to remember, always give them credit for what they're doing rather than penalise them for what they're not. And you may have an influence on what goes on in the rest of their lives. So the senior team presented with this script during awarding concurred that it was a level 4. It was actually a very good high level 4, discriminating controlled. So if you were there, well done. Okay, fabulous. Let's move on to our strategies for teaching. I've given you quite a few things along the way, but what is generally agreed upon is that candidates are at various levels. Obviously, the 5 levels. At level 1, they are visitors to a text. Okay, these are the swimmers in my analogy. They find things, they identify, often on a simple level and frequently with variable accuracy. At level 2, they move between visitors and reviewers. So they've got their snorkel and masks on now a little bit, and they are going for a little snorkeling activity. They find things that may seem unconnected and they might comment on them. For example, they might say bro is an example of lexis, which should be brother in standard English, but it doesn't actually give them many marks. It doesn't say anything really. At level 3, they're now starting to snorkel with more intention here. They're more secure reviewers. They explain features. For example, the noun bro you possibly shows the influence of standard American English on this variety, which may be a result of the spread of American media. So you can see the difference between level 2 and level 3. Moving on to level 4, they're becoming explorers. So they're now swapping over their snorkel and masks and they're putting on their deep sea diving gear. I apologise if you're nodding and going, oh, what's she on about? But students understand this, okay? So they've got their diving gear on now, they're becoming explorers. They know what they're looking for, and there is more discriminating consideration of what's being gathered from the text with a clear sense of how what is found connects to, excuse me, one or more standard forms. So their expedition is rewarding. This is where students look more closely and comment on more than just lexis and phonology. And there's often some attempt at evaluation, having that confidence to go for it. And here we go to level 5. This is the deep sea diving, and this exploration goes further. They're in amongst the Titanic down there, and they're moving into scrutiny and overview of the text or texts and what the explorer has found engaging and stimulating in the material. Here is the very secure methodology, strong connections with well understood standard form, an evaluative approach to concepts and issues, and an evaluative approach, concepts and issues, and an evaluative approach to context as well. So basically, the journey has been entirely worthwhile. That was my analogy. Use it, lose it, abuse it, whatever. Okay, so here we're going to move on a little bit. I said at the beginning, we're going to look at some possible delivery approaches. This may or may not be interesting to you, or depending on which institution you are at, they might have ways that they always teach this. They always go down the linear route, or they always go down the modular route. But these are the variations here that you can see on the screen in front of you, doing all 4 together, or splitting it up into AS and then A2, or mixing and matching, doing AS and then with a resit possibility, which is the modular route, and then following on doing the unit 3 with the resit opportunity in the June. Lots of combinations of the above are possible. So it's a very flexible qualification. I would like to spend 5 minutes if people have, or maybe not. No, thank you. I'm sorry. I'm just going back to the group chat there. I didn't read the entire script. No, I didn't expect you to, Zuraida. I didn't expect you to. It's too much. But to generally place it, that was what the intention was there. Have we got time for a short discussion if you want to open up your mics? We've spent a lot of time marking, discussing. I've done an awful lot of time talking about paper 2. If you have any particular teaching methods or anything you think that have particularly worked with your groups, please either write them in the chat box, or we can open our mics. We only have really a couple of minutes available to this, but it might be something that people find worthwhile. Could you just give me either a thumbs up or a thumbs down as to whether you want to do this on an open mic, or whether you're happy just putting a couple of comments into the chat box, and then I will continue. Open mic would be quicker, Anzi. Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to open your mics, obviously it's not going to be that easy if everyone's mics are open at the same time. But if you do have something to say, then please do. Yeah, Michael, Lee, Anzi. So please open up, and if you've got anything that you want to share with the group, please feel free to do so. Anzi, raised your hand. Go on, talk.
Thank you, Sue. What I've found works really well is to ask them to correct themselves, to give them a sample of an answer, and to ask them to identify what is missing from that answer, and then discuss how we can improve it. So it's absolutely. I found that works really well. So they can
I agree
give
completely.
the sample a mark even.
Perfect. Well, like I said before, the mark scheme and past papers and the responses and the examiner's comments, it's not secret. Give the candidates everything you possibly can. Let them go back and find out what worked, what didn't work, what could be made better. Perfect. Using highlighters like there's no tomorrow. Perfect. Thank you very much, Anzi. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with Anzi. And then I think after seeing the remarks, I would say just allowing the students to rewrite their papers and see what kind of.
Absolutely. Is that you, Michael, who's talking there?
Yes, it was.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. So having the opportunity to revisit scripts, rewrite them, be analytical, evaluative, absolutely. Just let them really have access to everything and have a go at everything. And they learn so quickly and they will absorb, oh, I didn't realize that was good. I didn't realize you could do that. Just by seeing previous papers, by seeing the mark scheme, by seeing previous responses. You know, what I've given you today, I would like to say that in your booklet, in your delegates pack, you have something called sample assessment material, the SAM. Use that. There's a material in there that is available for you to use, and on the website. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. There's lots of support on the website for you to help you on your journey with this qualification.
Could I ask a question as well?
Yes, of course.
Out of the 1 to 9 band, which would be considered like a really good mark for an international student?
The top band, obviously.
Yeah, the top band, obviously.
Yeah.
But I mean, apart from the top band, do you have like any percentages of international students and how well they do at international A levels, or is there just a variety of?
Yeah, I don't have any of that data on hand at the moment. Sorry, who's speaking at the moment?
Anastasia.
Anastasia, hello, welcome back. Sorry,
Yeah.
Anastasia. Yeah, I don't like just talking to a voice. I like talking to a person.
Yes.
I haven't got that data on hand, Anastasia, but if you contact, I'm going to give you the details of Claire at the moment at the end. If you send an email to her, she will let you
Yeah.
know that, or she will then redirect your email to come to me, and I will send information to you, no problem at all. Okay?
Claire's the head, right? Yeah, because
Yeah,
I know I have the
she's a-
email. Yeah, don't worry.
Yeah, I'm going to give you the information in a couple of slides' time. Okay, so
Okay, thank you so much.
it's right at the end of the presentation. If you can't stay with us till the end, it's right at the end. Claire Haviland, she will take any of your questions, and then she'll usually throw them in my direction as well. Okay, so I
Okay,
can help
that's
you out
great.
with
Yeah,
that and get
I have-
details together for you. Okay.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Okay, so let us move on to the support that I've just briefly spoken about from Pearson Edexcel. We are here to support you at absolutely every stage of your journey in this qualification to help your students to achieve. Free resources and support, you can see there in front of you: planning, teaching and learning, and then exam preparation and assessment, and then the results support as well. Teaching and learning materials online. If you go onto the website, that's just one example here, but there are a number of resources available on our website. This web page here, illustrated, has 4 tabs: specification, exam materials, forms and administration for documents and help with admin and so on, and then teaching and learning materials, including exemplars, lesson plans, course planners, and so much more. We're always adding to this bank of materials, so if you visit it once and then revisit it, you might find there's been things added to it, so it's always worth going back and checking things. Excuse me. Pearson Edexcel also has a support for exam preparation and post results called Results Plus. It's a tool for teachers which they may find useful in analysis of their students and their own teaching performance. Results Plus, you can see an in-depth data on the performance of a candidate, the class or school in reference to the cohort. The teachers can use this to see which questions and specific points the students have performed well in or in poorly in, and use this in their choices around revision work, resits, and also future classroom teaching. So Results Plus is really useful. It happens in 4 stages, basically, where it's a free online service that Pearson Edexcel provides. It was developed in 2007 when Pearson Edexcel looked at how it could modernize its exam marking process, and it brought over something called ePen from marking technology from America, and that's used now for the examiners when we mark things. Students take the exam in the traditional paper way, which actually might change in the future, but watch this space. Papers are then sent to a central processing centre where they are scanned. Then the electronic copies are then sent electronically to examiners. And this allows us to send the particular papers to, of the same paper, some particular items, particular questions of the same paper to different examiners depending on their expertise. And then it all comes back. It's marked on screen digitally, and then everything's consolidated back and collected into a central system. So it's a really efficient way of marking.
You're like, I think a whole essay.
Could you mute your mics going forward? I've got feedback going on again. Thank you. Another tool that teachers have available to them, which is free, is called Exam Wizard. And this is a tool that teachers may find useful in producing exercises and past papers for students for use in classrooms or in preparation for exams. Exam Wizard uses questions from exam papers, and so actually the bank of questions gets bigger and bigger, because with each series then more questions are put into the system, and so that bank of resources increases to produce bespoke questions or question papers depending what teachers are selecting to test. So that Exam Wizard is a really, really useful tool. The ATS, which is an online portal, access to script rather, online portal. This is a self-service, online, free and instant from the results day. So as soon as results day occurs, then this is available to teachers, the access to script. And what it does, it allows you to see your students' marked exam papers free of charge. It's available for all the qualifications and is accessed through the Edexcel online portal. Note though, please, that the scripts don't have examiner annotation on them. Okay, it's Edexcel is the only awarding organisation that actually has that available to you free of charge. More information, contact the website and you'll find out all the information. If you have any questions, obviously you can email Claire at the end. I'll give you her details, but everything is on the Pearson Edexcel website. We do have additional paid resources as well. The resource here is a curriculum match student books, where there's 2 of them, and they are they're active, they're electronic. My voice is just about going. These books are used for planning, teaching and learning, and also for exam preparation and assessment. So Pearson Edexcel, we are committed to helping teachers to deliver this qualification, the Pearson Edexcel qualification, and helping students to achieve their absolute full potential. To do this, we aim for our qualifications to be supported by a wide range of high quality resources produced by a range of publishers. However, it isn't compulsory, it isn't necessary for you to purchase the endorsed resources in order to deliver our qualifications. There is a magnitude of resources out there. You are free to choose whichever you wish, but we do have everything there available for you should you wish to choose our resources. So this paid resource, there are 2 books, English Language Student Book 1 and Student Book 2. They provide full coverage of the specification content, and they include learning objectives. They have a clear layout with a range of texts and extract. They have definitions of key terms. They have the glossary at the back. They have variety of activities to embed the different understanding principles. There's a box called Thinking Like a Linguist, which explores an aspect of the English language in more detail, a realistic Thinking Like a Linguist box. Checkpoint questions which facilitate revision at the end of each chapter, And also there's regular exam preparation sections, which gradually develop that all-important exam technique. Each printed student book comes with a code at the beginning, and that gives access to a digital version of the book, which is valid for 2 years from activation. So where might I find additional resources? So there's some information there. Basically, it's not an exhaustive list by any means, but there are lots of things that you can go to there. Ballard, Burton, Sarah Thorne, BBC News in Pidgin, interesting. Sample papers, examiners' reports. There's lots of things there for you to browse through and dip into. Okay, they're on the slides that you have available to you. And then the final slides now, the subject advisor for this is Claire Haviland. And those are her contact details there. We have a number, we have a couple of links going on, her email address, Twitter. You can sign up to regular subject advisor updates, and you can also book an appointment with Claire if you wish. You can send her all your questions that we haven't had time, or I haven't had time, and I apologise for that, within the 2-hour period today. I've tried to get through as much as I can with you within this time frame. A couple of activities for you to have had a go at, and hopefully you have been able to take something from it. Questions, as I say, probably would be best to direct them towards Claire, because then you can expand on them as much as you wish, and you can make specific questions about things, and then she will throw them in my direction, and I will help you out with that as much as I can as well. So thank you for your patience today. If I saw you or heard you on Monday, then welcome back to today, and that I hope you found the information useful. For those of you who are new to the presentation today, I look forward to hopefully seeing you next week when I cover paper 3 on Monday and paper 4 on Wednesday. So if you're there, great. If you don't, then it's been wonderful having you here today in the presentation. And I hope that you enjoyed the journey of this fabulous, fabulous subject with this fabulous, fabulous company. Okay, and I look forward to speaking to you next time. So, Pearson, okay, thank you very much.